Hey everybody, welcome back. Today is the day you're going to learn how to play Rain and how they recorded Rain by the Beatles in 1966, right ahead of their Revolver sessions. And I have to say, we all got this wrong. All of us that I could find on YouTube ever in history, including the video I made about a year and a half ago. Way wrong. Well, not way wrong, but wrong. Okay. So the Beatles released a new Super Deluxe set for Revolver, and it has a lot of great new stereo mixes and mono mixes. And among the outtakes, and I was hoping they would do something like this, is the true original speed recording of Rain. And it was way faster than I think anybody ever anticipated. So we're going to go over that. I'm going to show you what the tuning was on the guitar, what the actual speed was, and how they actually went through the process of taking that and slowing it down and adding on bass later and all that stuff. So your questions about Rain, hopefully all the questions about Rain that have been unanswered will go answered today. So one of the things that I'm going to do here is I'll take us through all the parts, and then at the end, I'll demonstrate it in the original key and then slow it down through the magic of video editing so it sounds closer to how we know it on the record. All right, so if you haven't done so already, I appreciate it if you jump down and click subscribe and ring the bell, let you know every time that I drop new content, which I do every single week. All my videos have jump links in them, so you can go right to the part of the lesson that you want to see and bypass some of my yapping. And if you're looking for other ways to support the channel, I really appreciate that. Down below, there's super thanks, which is like throwing a tip in the tip jar. There's also my Patreon page where I've got tabs and chord charts for the lessons that I do here on YouTube. And there's even some fun merchandise. All of those links are down in the description. Check it out. And by the way, I'm sure this video is going to be demonetized because I'm borrowing Ringo's isolated drum track to speed up and slow down on the demonstrations and things at the front of the lesson. So I appreciate any tip jar you can offer. Okay, so Rain. So there's a lot of questions that were answered with this. Everybody knew that the Beatles recorded it at a faster tempo, slowed it down to the version that you hear on the record. And they do that because it changes the sonic characteristics of the guitars and the drums. They sound different, and the way the crash cymbal decays over time. It just creates its own sound. And so what we understand from Rain when we're listening to the record, it's vaguely sort of in G. And so it was speculated, oh, maybe they recorded it in, G sharp, up a fret, capoed up or something like that, and they slowed it down for an effect. But what we learned is that the real tempo and the real key that they're in is actually much closer to B flat, which is way higher than I think anybody ever thought it was going to be, and which would mean that the tempo was recorded way faster than I think anybody also thought it would be, which is a great testament to the drum work that Ringo did on this song. He remarked that it was always among his favorite piece of drum work that he did with the band. And even at the normal slowed down speed, it's super cool. But when you hear it at the original fast tempo, you have a much greater appreciation for all the fills and the stuff that he did. Okay, so number one, it was in sort of B flat. Number two, I think everybody assumed that there's two guitars going on. And I don't think there is. When you listen to that, all of that I think is one guitar. The clue for that is at the very end of the outtake on the Revolver session, you can hear whoever's playing the guitar. I think it's George, and I think it's on his SG. You hear him play around a little bit, noodle, and it's way past the sort of normal fade out that we hear. And you hear him do this little, this, I'll talk about the tuning in a sec, but he does this little fill, and then it stops. And there's no other sort of guitar that's happening. And it seems to be filling up the space. So long story short, I think one of the questions that was answered was that this is the guitar that you hear. There's one guitar playing on this. And then another question that was answered, I think, is the tuning. I didn't realize how much of an alternate tuning this was. When you hear the strums, the long strums that he does, it's pretty apparent that it's an open tuning. It's an open tuning that he's using. And so when you sort of reverse engineer all of that, plus the fact that you hear these really low tuned strings throughout the song, and especially at the end, this is the tuning that you end up getting, okay? I'm going to pick them one by one, but here's the notes. The first one. Okay, all together, that's sort of those are notes that are in a B, close to a B flat chord. I can't even promise that it's actually in B flat, but that's where it is. Okay, so that's the tuning that they used. You can see I've got it capoed at 1. Now I did want to add, you actually can tune your guitar down to the G tuning to get those low notes. It just, some guitars seem to fare better with that than others. But if you want to tune your guitar down and try this live and actually try and do this alternate tuning and be sort of in the key of G, here's the notes that you need. So now you're in low G, D, G, G, B, and D. So you actually have so now you're in it. What you have to just be careful of is your low string is tuned really low. So it just depends. You could be getting some fret rattle. It helps when you sort of pick back here by the bridge to get a nice fat tone, but you can tune it down all the way to get the pitch that that the song ends up being in. Okay, so that's the tuning. So the second part is the way that he's playing this. So if that's an open, I'm just going to call it B flat. If that's an open B flat, what he's playing to go to the 4 chord, so for a B flat, the 4 chord would be a E flat. What he does is he just adds his index finger on the first fret above the capo. Okay. And when you hit that note, you also can go 2 frets up on the B string, or actually the 3rd fret above the capo, and that's the unison, and that does happen throughout the song too in a couple places. So roughly speaking, here is how he's playing through those verses. But he's actually playing it faster. It's more closer to this. Right? So that's sort of the speed that the whole band is playing the song. And I'll have a link, by the way, if you haven't heard it already. Here's the link to the original take. That's on the Beatles Revolver box set. So he's basically playing around with that form. Or either way, you sort of mix them up. But it's all against the backdrop of a droning B flat, which is in line with a lot of the, the Indian influenced music that was clearly in place with the Beatles, driven by George Harrison at that time. So then you get to the chorus, and the chord shape for the chorus is an just a big rake open open strum. Right? And then the next chord that you come to is shaped like this. I can't even tell you what that chord is, but that's what it is. So we have our open strum, and we have this shape. And when they're playing it at tempo, it's sort of like this. So those are the sort of the primary parts of, that's how you play, you know, that's how you're playing the parts and how they played it live. The only other part is that the outro, and that's where the really low string comes in, and you really hear that pronounced. Again, I believe it's only one guitar, but you know, it does the little break at the end, and then it does the outro section where you have John's backward vocal that was overlaid over it. So it's basically arpeggiating the strings in the tuning. So it's something like this. And you sort of improvise. But again, it's played at the original speed, so it's more closer to this. Just sort of improvise over that theme. So again, the Beatles played it at that up tempo. They recorded it in this key with, I believe, this tuning. And I showed you each one of the parts in the original key, but we all know it and sing it in G, right? So what they did was they recorded that whole take without the bass, and they slowed it down. As near as I can tell, they slowed it down about 83% of the original take speed, and that got you to where it landed. So I'll run down each one of those sections real quick and close to original tempo, and then I'll slow it down through the magic of video editing to bring it down to the key that we all know it in, and you'll sort of see how that all happened, all right? So let's give this a try. that's how they did Rain. Did you learn something new today? I hope so. Hey, if you haven't done so already and you like this kind of stuff, jump down and click subscribe and ring the bell. Let you know every time I release new content, which I do every single week. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this. And if there's another song you want me to take on and do a lesson, love to hear what that is. And until next week, take care, everybody.